Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yes, ma'am.
ma'am.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Now let's begin with trademarks today, the introduction to trademarks. Now, I know which product I want to buy. In my mind, I know which product I want to buy. So, for example, I want to buy sportswear. Okay, I know that I am a fan of the brand Nike because I think the products are more durable. I think it's less expensive, and I just think that they make better quality products than other sportswear brands. Now I go to the market. There are two identical colored t-shirts with probably similar prints, and I can differentiate between the two t-shirts as to which one belongs to Nike and which one belongs to, say, Reebok. Now, how do I get to know that I want the Nike t-shirt and which one is the Nike t-shirt? That I will get to know by looking at the trademark of Nike, the tick that Nike has, and the tagline that Nike has, which says "Just do it." The T-shirt which will have that trademark on it will be the product I want to buy. So we can infer that trademarks serve the purpose of identifying the product. It tells the consumer that the product belongs to which brand. It also helps in advertising. So if Nike wants to advertise their product on TV, so what, or on newspaper by or printing out flyers, how will they tell people that this is the Nike product? So they have a trademark for that. Like just writing Nike will not be attractive at all. It will not serve the purpose of trading like conveniently. So the concepts of trademark came into play. Now, why is it important to protect trademarks? If if trademarks are not protected, what loss will the company suffer from, or what problem will the consumer face? Now, protecting a trademark is a very two-way process. If the trademark is not protected, if people are allowed to copy each other's trademarks, see, if it's not protected, that means it's legal to copyright. So if everybody starts copying each other's trademarks or start using each other's trademark, what problem will be there? First, the consumers will be confused. So likelihood of confusion on the part of consumers. A consumer who wants to buy a particular product will not get to know which product is the which product belongs to the brand he favors or he wants to buy. So he cannot make an informed choice about the product. He will spend money but end up buying probably the wrong product, which is not fair, right? Similarly, for the person who's selling, or the owner of the company, for example, who is suppose owner of Nike, okay, he has spent years of hard work and in building his reputation, goodwill, and he has spent a lot of money on research, development of the brand, then advertising costs. So there are millions of costs that go into such big enterprises. If his trademark is started to be copied by other brands, and suppose the other brand sells inferior quality products, so people will think that Nike has started selling inferior quality products. So there is also a case which happened after the pandemic in 2020 April. So we all are aware of the brand Dettol, right? So Dettol started making hand sanitizers and everything. So they were selling sanitizers before also, but obviously after the pandemic, the importance of sanitizers has drastically increased. We all know, like before that, hardly people used to carry sanitizers. So they became more popular. Many companies started like manufacturing more sanitizers and everything. Now, there was a company called Mohit Petrochemicals who came up with the brand or a trade name in the name Deftol. So they see, if we pronounce both the words Dettol and Deftol, they are very similar. So a person who is not that much educated or who can't read properly, he will probably get confused between the two brands. If he like associates, somebody is unmuted, please mute yourself. So if a person associates Dettol with the color of the product, for example, the green and white combination that Dettol soaps or sanitizers use, and Mohit Petrochemicals also was selling in the same color combination, green and white, but they were just uh, selling it under the name of Deftol. Now, any, like not even illiterate, but any person who is little less educated or less aware might end up buying Deftol thinking it to be Dettol, right? So the consumer is subconsciously being defrauded. Now, this is where the importance of trademark protection comes into play. Here, Dettol sued Mohit Petrochemicals for trademark infringement, and they were asked to withdraw all products of Dettol in the markets. So everything was shelved off, and all the products were like thrown away, and they were also like compensated by 1 lakh rupees. So if we don't protect trademarks, the consumers will also suffer, the company who has spent money will also suffer, and it's a two-sided loss. Now, trademark can be a logo, it can be a label, signature, it can be a word, a number, it can be anything. How creative you can be depends, will determine the trademark. Now, if we go to the technical definition, it says trademark refers to any logo, label, sealing, signature. It could be a sign, it could be a name, word, letter, numeral, shape of goods. Now, shape of good, for example, there is a peculiar shape pen that I have created, and I want to trademark that shape itself. So trademark need not only be a label that is affixed on the product, it could be a shape also, right? It could be a smell also. Like there are smell marks also. So perfume brands, they get the particular fragrance trademarked. So no other perfume company can like create the same fragrance using the same process or the same chemicals. So shape marks, smell marks, and some other marks, we will come to that at the end of the unit. I think we will deal with the unconventional trademarks later. So shape of goods can also be a trademark. Packaging, like I just gave the example of that Dettol case. So usme green and white was being used. So that was the packaging of the product. Now this packaging is also called trade dress. Basically, the dress that the product is wearing, which is used for trading, is called the trade dress. So how the product is packed, what color combination is used, what fonts are used to write on the packaging, how the product is packed. Suppose it is packed in a very different manner that only one brand uses that packaging. So that can also be trademarked. If some other brand tries to pack their products in the same manner, then they can be sued for trademark infringement under packaging also. Combination of colors. Now, there is a brand called Tommy Hilfiger who has a logo of combination of colors of red, blue, and white, I think. So that is a trademarked combination of colors. If anybody uses the same color combination in the same pattern or the same order, they can be sued for trademark infringement. It is not only the logo, it is also the combination of color that is protected. So trademark protection is a very diverse kind of protection that people get. It has a variety of like categories of protection. It need not be just a small number or a logo. It can be the shape, it can be a smell, it can be anything. So it's very important to like provide this diversification, because trademark is a very dynamic kind of a IPR. With the increase of trade, like if you go into international trade, for example, your protection has to be stronger because you have to now protect your mark or your brand globally. So trademark has to include such kinds of or categories of protections for it to be even like for it to be protectable even outside the country. Now, it is important to protect trademarks because it protects the public from confusion and deception by identifying the product they want to purchase, enabling them to make informed choices about the product. Just what I explained. It protects the trademark owner's trade and business and the goodwill attached to the trademark. See, in trademark, there are two kinds of words that we use. One is goodwill and one is reputation. Reputation is basically the opinion that the market or the consumers have of the trademark or the company. Like if it's good or bad, basically. Reputation is very subjective. It can be good or bad. It varies from opinion to opinion, person to person. I might find Nike to be very reputed. Someone else might find uh, uh, Reebok to be very reputed. So reputation is very subjective, opinion to opinion, person to person. Goodwill, on the other hand, is technical. So goodwill and reputation are not the same. Please remember this. Goodwill basically is inferred from the statistics. So, for example, how much sale the company is doing in a year, how many products they're selling, what is the consumer feedback. So basically from the statistical records, we can determine the goodwill of the trademark. So reputation is subjective and goodwill is objective. Now, the main functions of trademarks are identification of goods. Just like I told you, how will I get to know which good belongs to Nike? By looking at the trademark. So it identifies the good. It identifies the source of the basically the brand. It identifies about the quality. See, I find Nike's quality to be superior to Reebok. How do I know that this is the superior quality product I'm buying? By looking at the trademark. And if some company sells inferior quality products under the trademark of Nike, they are also infringing because they are selling inferior quality products. So the original trademark will identify the quality, and the infringing trademark will be infringing in terms of quality. I hope I'm being clear. If I'm going too fast, please stop me. I tend to speak a little fast in the flow. So please raise your hand and stop me if I'm going fast. Then fourth function is advertisement of the product. Just like I gave the example of advertising on TV or in a newspaper or like selling out flyers or anything. And now too we have sponsored ads on any or on every social media platform also. So we have sponsored ads on Instagram, on Facebook, everywhere. So if you search something on Amazon, the next moment you are scrolling Instagram, you will get ads of that
Excuse
product
me,
on your
ma'am.
Instagram also. Sorry?
Ma'am, you bit too fast. I'm writing notes as you're saying,
I'm so
ma'am.
sorry. I'll go slow. I'll go slow.
Yeah, okay.
So advertisement is a very important tool of gathering consumers. If you don't advertise, how will the consumers know what product you're selling, what perks you're giving to the consumers, how good your quality is? So advertisers usually exaggerate their product on TV, exaggerate them on like whatever tool of advertisement they're using. They basically advertise or promote their trademark when they are advertising their product. So they will never like dilute their trademark while advertising. So trademarks, a very important function is advertisement. Now there is also, so you might have seen certain advertisements wherein one brand is trying to defame the other brand. Like there were ads wherein Coca-Cola was trying to defame Pepsi by saying that that drink is not that good or trying to insult the other brand. Then there were some ads of Tide and Surf Excel wherein the actors were saying that Tide does not clean, as good as Surf Excel. And so this is called comparative advertising, wherein two brands are competing on TV, online, in front of the consumers live. Now, this is also termed as infringement. If you are trying to defame the other brand, you are not allowed to do that. You can hype up your brand. You can uh, say as many good things about your brand as you want to. Obviously, it should not be a lie. You cannot defraud your consumers, but you can like praise your brand as much as you want. But you cannot defame the other brand. You cannot pull down the other brand. If you start insulting the other brand by taking their name on TV live, then you will be sued. You can be sued for infringement. See, sometimes the competitor like answers by coming out with their own advertisement because they don't want to indulge into litigation and all. So they also come up with a disparaging ad. However, legally you can also take recourse to the court. This is also there. See, the logo of Adidas is its trademark. The logo of Citibank, YouTube, Coca-Cola, McDonald's, Apple, these are very common trademarks, right? We all have seen this. Now, if you like see closely in the Adidas and all other trademarks, there is a circle in which R is written. So you must have seen this R on a lot of products. Then you must have seen on some products there is TM written instead of R in a small circle. Like we have the copyright logo, C and a circle. For trademarks, we use these two logos, R and TM. Now the difference of between R and TM, where in some products why R is used and why in some products TM is used, is because R is used only in case of registered trademarks. So those brands who have gotten their trademark registered in the trademark registry before in the trademarks office, whose name is there in the register and who have a registration certificate in their hand, only are allowed to put this circle R on their products. All other brands who have not yet registered their trademarks, or they have applied for registration but it has not been approved, or their application is pending, or it has been not approved, it has been rejected, for example, for any XYZ reason, but they still want to use that trademark, they can use that trademark. Registration is not necessary for using the trademark. Registration is necessary if you want to sue someone. Okay, so if you want to sue someone, if somebody is copying your trademark, you can sue them if you are registered. So infringement can only happen against registered trademarks. So TM is used by those brands who don't have the registration certificate in their hand. This is the difference between the two logos that are there. So on every product you see, on 95% of the products, there is either R or TM circled. I hope this is clear. The TM logo can be used by a trademark user when the user has applied for registration, but it has not yet been granted registration and the application is under process. It is basically for unregistered trademarks. The R logo is used for the trademark if the trademark registration is granted and the certificate is issued. So basically for registered trademarks. This is the only difference. Otherwise, there is no technical difference between the two. This is only about the technical aspect of registration. It's only procedural difference. There is no difference in trademark meaning, protection, or anything. The next IPR is patents. Now, patents are granted to inventions. If I am creating a new technology, for example, if I'm creating a new kind of table, which according to, for example, which according to your mood changes the color. You don't press anything, it senses whether you're in a bad mood or a good mood, and it changes the color of the table. This is a new technology that at least I haven't seen yet. If I'm able to create this invention, I will be able to take a patent right over it. Now, as I told you, in copyright, originality was the criteria. It need not be new. I took the example of a romantic novel, right? Romance is not new. It is just original if you create an original story. In patents, newness or novelty is the criteria. The technology has to be new. It cannot be a minor change in some existing technology. It should not be a discovery. Something which is existing but you have just discovered. It should not be a discovery. It should be an invention. Now, patents are granted for a limited time period of 20 years. Now, if we go to all IPRs that we have, all categories of IPRs, they are granted for specific time durations. Why this is so is because IPR is basically trying to balance private and public interest. Okay, now forget patent for now. Listen to me in a general sense for 2 minutes. I am creating something. It could be a novel under copyright. It could be a tube light under patent. It could be anything. Basically, I'm just talking about IPR in the general sense. I am creating something new for the society or for myself. I created it. Now I'm commercially exploiting it. I'm realizing the fruits of my hard work. I'm earning money. I'm recovering my research and development costs. I'm earning profits also. After I'm done earning profits, I'm done commercially enjoying my product. Now it is time for the society to do so. This happens to balance the public and the private interest. Somebody is unmuted. Yeah. This happens to balance the private and the public interest. So IPR seeks to do that. So there was also, I did a project on IPR and human rights also, which talked about balancing the two interests. Now, I'll take a very relevant example to explain to you guys. So, after the pandemic, there are a lot of vaccines that are coming into the market, right? So, there are the vaccine, there is Covishield, there is Covaxin, whatnot. So, there are around 5 to 6 vaccines, and internationally, there are more. Now, if these vaccines are patented, okay, then they will either sell it on very high prices, which half of the population will not be able to afford, Or if they refuse to sell it in the market, they say we don't want to sell it in India, we want to sell it in Europe because they will pay us higher, like more money. What can the country do because it's patented? So, like, what recourse can the country take to save their population? Here, the discussions are going on for an IPR waiver. So if you're reading newspapers and you're updated, so you will know that there are talks of India and Africa supporting an IPR waiver so that there is no IPR itself on the products. The products are given to the government owned, so that they can distribute the vaccines evenly into their population. Now, waiving the IPR will hamper both the sides. First side, if the IPR is completely waived, okay, we assume that there is no intellectual property protection to the vaccines. Now the company who's making the vaccine, the Pfizer or Bharat Biotech and all these companies, what incentive will they have to create vaccines? They would not want to create vaccines now, because they are not getting any money. Instead, they're spending double the amount uh, they would anyway have earned, because creating a vaccine is a very dynamic process. We are getting new mutants after every some months, and the old vaccine becomes redundant. So, like, we also see, we get confused between ki kaun si vaccine is better, which vaccine is effective against the new mutant, the delta mutant, whatever, like, variants are coming. So creating the vaccine takes a lot of technical knowledge. It takes a lot of money. It takes a lot of time and effort. A vaccine takes years to develop an effective vaccine. This is just something to take care of the immediate situation, because even after the vaccine, people are getting infected. It's not that they are not getting infected, it's just less intense. So, like, the death rate will reduce, the hospitals will be like less occupied and all that. Considering that so much effort and time and money goes into creating a vaccine, if they are not even getting their IPR on it, if they're not allowed to obtain a patent over the vaccine, they have no incentive left to create. They will refuse, and you can't force them to create it because it's a very technical thing to create. Nobody else can do it in their place. You have to keep them happy. If the IPS is completely waived and they refuse to create, who will suffer? The whole public, the whole country, probably even other countries, because import and export of vaccines is also going on right now. So if one country, and a country as big as India, refuses to create vaccines, then the problem will be suffered worldwide, probably, especially Indians, if we only restrict ourselves to India. In such a situation, IPR waiver might prove to be counterproductive. What we are trying to achieve, like a you know a national production of vaccines, might not be achieved. The opposite might happen. In such a case, the need arises to balance the public and the private interest. How this can be balanced is that probably the royalty rates can be reduced for vaccine, so that it's not expensive, but there should be a rate at which the vaccine is sold to people. For the people who are below poverty line or people who cannot afford the vaccine, the government should pay for the vaccine. But the IPR should not be waived. The company should be allowed to retain patents over their vaccine at least for 20 years, which is provided in the act. IPR should not be waived. This is how the balancing of public and private interest becomes relevant, especially in the health sector today. I hope everybody is able to understand what I'm trying to explain. If you're not able to understand or you want to add to the discussion, you can raise your hand and you can speak. So please let me know however you want the class to go. Now, patent is an exclusive right conferred upon an inventor to use or exploit his invention for a particular period of time. In India, this time period is 20 years from the date of application. During this time, the inventor has the right to exclude anyone else from commercially exploiting his invention. IPR is a negative right. In the sense, you can exclude others from using your IP. The inventor for 20 years can exclude others from using his invention. In the sense, if somebody is trying to do that, he has to take the inventor's permission. And if the inventor does not give the permission, he cannot use it. If he does, he will be sued for infringement. Now, there is a technical, you can say, a gap between this permission aspect. How? So, say for example, a person has invented a medicine for okay, I'll take a real case only. The name and all the technicalities I'll go into when we are dealing with the unit on patents. I'll just discuss the facts as an example. So a company, a big pharmaceutical giant, creates a medicine for curing liver and kidney cancer. That medicine costs about the dosage of the price of one dosage costs 5 lakhs per month. This is an amount which I think only 10 to 20% of the population can afford, of India at least. 80% cannot afford. Now, in such a case, the person refuses to give permission to some other company to use his invention for making the same drug. Now, this is a life-threatening disease, cancer, liver and kidney cancer, and the person is not allowing. Now, what to do in such a situation? You can't let people die because somebody wants to make money, right? In such situations, the Patent Act provides for a provision of compulsory licensing. Now, compulsory licensing means if a person refuses to give permission uh, for using his invention. Now there is a criteria for this. Now every now and then, otherwise people will go and ask the government for a compulsory license. That cannot be the case because also have to protect the rights of the patent holder. So we have three criterias. If the patent holder, first criteria, if the patent holder is selling the invention at an exorbitantly high price in the market, which is not affordable, then a person can go for a compulsory license. If the patent holder is not selling the product only in the market, if he's holding the product and he's waiting for the prices to go up and then sell the product, then somebody can apply for a compulsory license. Or if the patent is not being worked in India, okay, matlab it is not being used in India, he's going outside and doing and selling it, then a third person can go and apply for a compulsory license. The first step is that the patent holder must have refused to grant a voluntary license. If he agrees, then you can't get a compulsory license issued. It's only when he refuses. In cases of specially medicines, compulsory licenses are applied for. However, countries like USA, who are very money minded and they don't give a lot of attention to human life, we can see the example of the pandemic only, like how people were dying and they still did not close down, they still did not impose a full lockdown because they didn't want their economy to triple. Now, in such cases where compulsory licenses are granted, it obviously hampers the economy a little because the taxes and the giants, lose money. USA, therefore, is very discouraging in grant of compulsory license to every country. They say that you are hampering the IPR protection laws, so you should not be granting compulsory licenses. India till now has only granted one compulsory license. The case of the liver and kidney drug that I was telling you about, it is a real case. So India granted a compulsory license to another pharmaceutical company who created the same drug for liver and kidney cancer, but at 5,000 or 8,000 rupees per dose. So from 2 or 5 lakhs, it was reduced to 5 or 8,000, which becomes affordable for a larger population. Now, basically, medical expenses are very high these days. Like one day hospital bed costs 50,000, 1 lakh, 2 lakhs. So 8,000 for a life-saving medicine is not that much. People can still afford it. It's better than 5 lakhs. So compulsory license was granted to the other company called Natco, and they started making the drug. In such a case, the patent holder, original patent holder who was selling it at a very high price, gets royalty. So a percentage of royalty is decided, and from the sale of every drug, a percentage of royalty goes to the patent holder as compensation. So it's not like everybody it's a win-win situation. It's just compensated in some other way. Now, if we go into the statistical data and we see, the patent holder is actually not suffering from losses because when he was selling the drug at 5 lakh a dose, probably only 10% of the population was able to afford it. Even if that 10% of the population was able to pay 5 lakh rupees to them, they were losing out on 90 or 80% of the population. They were not the consumers. When the price of the drug falls down, more population can afford it. So probably now 80% of the population can afford it, right? So their consumer base increases, all the money gets compensated because now so many people are going to pay 8,000. It probably gets more than 5 lakh dose. So I don't understand why people fight for this, especially such big giants, because their money is easily compensated. It's not like they suffer from a lot of loss. I think it mostly becomes an ego game also that somebody took a compulsory license on the, on their invention and not a voluntary license or whatever. But if we see mathematically, then everything gets recovered. Now, patents are granted only on inventions. Invention is the core word of patent law, meaning they are only granted to new creations and inventive creations by persons. After the 20 years of exclusive exploitation by the inventor are over, the invention falls into public domain for exploitation by the society. Here, the balance of public and private interest comes into play. So, if a person has developed, for example, a paracetamol, he has developed a new variant of invented a new variant of a paracetamol. He has exploited it for 20 years. For 20 years, only his brand could sell it in the chemist shops. Now, after 20 years, any other brand can use the process and sell the patented product. The patent holder cannot exceed 20 years for protection. In this manner, the patentee gets to commercially exploit his invention in which he put his intellect and hard work, and the society also gets to benefit from the invention after 20 years. So this time period is set only to balance public and private interest, so that first the person recovers his money and he earns some profits of his hard work, and then the society also enjoys the benefit. So it's a circle. See, if the society is not benefiting from every creation, then the development process will get hampered. So it is very important that whatever inventions are being created by the whole country, they are disseminated into the society for ultimate use. Industrial designs. Design mean only the features of shape, patterns, ornamentation of the product. It only relates to the aesthetic value of the product, its look, appeal to the eye, and newness of the design. See, for a design to be protected, for me to protect a product on which I have created a new design, the design has to be novel. Just like patents, novelty is also the criteria in designs. I'm copying somebody else's design, I'm just like changing somebody else's design a little, like modifying it a little bit and making it my own. I'm not allowed. My design has to be properly new. It should be aesthetic in look. It should appeal to the eye. Now, what might be aesthetic to me might not be aesthetic to you. It's very subjective of what is appealing to the eye. So the criteria that is set, we cannot have a straitjacket formula as to what is pretty and what is not. It is very a person to person opinion. So the only criteria that we set for design law in India is that it should not relate to the functionality of the product. It should not serve any technical function. It should only be look-wise appealing. Look-wise appealing need not mean it should look pretty to me. It might not look pretty to you, but it just means it should not serve any technical function. It does not include any feature of functionality or manner of use of the product, but only the look of the product. When the functionality aspects comes into play, it falls under the patent law. Remember this. Technology, functionality are all the role of patents. Otherwise, if design also protected functionality, then what is the difference between design and patent? Nothing. So new inventive technologies, new inventive functionalities, all are a part of patent. Designs only protect aesthetic and appeal to the eye products, which basically are different in their look. In other words, the subject of the design should be visually appealing. Now let's look at examples. So the bottle on the left is the first bottle of Coca-Cola, and the last bottle is the latest bottle we have in the glass like material. Now, all the bottles from the first to the last, the shape of the bottle keeps changing. There is no technical purpose that each shape is serving. All bottles are easy to hold. All bottles have a opening to drink. So there is no technical or technical function that every bottle is serving. All the bottles are different in design, and Coca-Cola has protected its design with every changing bottle. Designs, the protection of design we only get for 15 years. Like patent we have for 20 years, designs we have for 15 years. So 10 years is the initial protection and you can renew it for 5 more years. After 15 years, it's over, you can't renew it any further. So for 15 years, Coca-Cola has been protecting all its designs. Now, these designs are only visually appealing to the eye. They are only attractive to consumers. There is no technical purpose being served. If we look at the chair on the right, the chair, the metal rods that are below the wooden part, they are not serving any technical purpose. 4 legs would have served that purpose. Now, this is a very complicated design which has been made to make the product look different in the market, to make it stand out in the market. So it is only visually appealing, which attracts more consumers, because if you see this chair and a normal chair with 4 legs, you will probably go to this chair and see ki, what's new in this, what is the price, if it's cost effective, we can buy this because it looks different. When you go to the market, you tend to look for different products, right? Because you're bored of the usual products we use in the house and everything. For this purpose, the brands, they make their products visually appealing and attractive, and they protect it under the Designs Act so that nobody else copies their own design. Because if there is one product in the market, this chair suppose reaches the market, and then 10 other brands from next week start selling the same chair with the same design, then what? Then all his effort goes to waste. All the time, money he spent in creating this design goes to waste. So it is important also to protect the designs, because designs to also take a lot of effort to create. This chair, I'm sure, must have created some time to the like person who created the design. Now, designs may, like every product, if you see, can have a variety of IPR in it. It's not necessary that one product has only one IPR. So if we see this chair, if there is a logo on the chair, it becomes a trademark. Now, a person who created the design must have first like drawn the design on a piece of paper, right? The piece of paper containing the design is copyrighted. It is the product on which the design is like incorporated, which is protected under the Designs Act. So just remember this thing: when on paper I'm drawing something, it comes under an artistic work under copyright. When I put it on the chair, I like manufacture it on the chair, it becomes protected under the Designs Act. When I put a logo on it, that logo goes under the Trademarks Act. So one product can have a variety of IPs. Now GIs. GIs, I told you, they designate themselves to the place of origin, the place of geographical origin. GIs indicate those goods that originate from a particular locality, region, or country. The product on which the GI is affixed must contain some feature or characteristic that are attributable to its place of origin. So, see, wines, now we get a variety of wines in the market these days. However, the first proper wine, the original authentic wine, originated from Europe. The grapes, the particular grapes that is used to make wine, we used to get only in Europe. Now, though Indians are making wine out of everything. So these are not very high quality premium wines that we get here, but the original wines are geographical indication protected under Europe. Now, Europe probably does not have GI protection here, so people are making wines, but originally the GI protection started because of wines in Europe only. So I'm telling you the origin why GI Act came into force. These characteristics could be due to a particular kind of soil, a particular weather which is required by the product, some specific raw material that is available only in that geographical region, and so on. So, a particular variety of mango, for example, is grown only in one particular soil and climate, which is there only in one area of India. That variety of mango cannot be grown in Delhi or Mumbai or any place, because Mumbai is humid, Delhi is dry or hot. So a particular soil and variety is needed. Such products are protected under geographical indications because they are specific to that geographical condition. For example, Darjeeling tea, Kashmir Pashmina, Basmati rice, Kolhapuri chappals. Now, the Pashmina, that is original Kashmiri Pashmina, you cannot ever get in any other state. Like, we see a lot of Pashmina shawls in the market. Either they are legally imported from Kashmir itself, or they are illegally made with some other wool and they are falsely claiming it to be original pashmina. So a very few people can differentiate between original and fake pashmina. In fact, even saris, like Kanjivaram saris, a lot of fake Kanjivaram saris are there in the market. Otherwise, those saris cost in thousands of rupees and probably it reaches a lakh or two also. The original pashmina. So I know a Kashmiri person who sells shawls starting from 5,000 to 10 lakh rupees per shawl. So that is the difference between the original Kashmiri pashmina. Now, why is it necessary to protect the GI? Because, see, I'll take the example of my own Kashmiri vendor. So he spends a lot of money and he spends a lot of effort. So that shawl that he sells for 2 lakh rupees, it takes him almost a year to prepare, along with the like karigars that he has. Now, what if somebody sells the same similar quality shawl, like using fake wool or something, and he claims it to be original pashmina? Some uninformed or unaware consumer might believe him that this must be the original pashmina. He doesn't know how to differentiate. He is trusting the shopkeeper and he buys it. Now, the authentic Kashmiri vendor loses a consumer because the person thinking it to be original, having the buying capacity, but ends up buying the wrong pashmina. The person who originally created it suffers a huge loss, although he was the person who was being honest. That's why GIs are put on the products so that people know. Is the time over? So that people know that which product is bearing the original GI and which product is the authentic Kashmiri Pashmina. The rationale for protection is that they identify the goods originating from a particular geographical area and inform the consumers that the goods are from an area where a given quality or reputation are essential, and they promote local producers of that area. Now see this chappal, that the picture of chappal that I've put here is a Kolhapuri chappal, the original Kolhapuri chappal. The same design we get in the market at every footwear shop today. But the original Kolhapuri chappal has a particular material they use in the base and a particular fitting that they have. That particular fitting and this thing I've never even felt or seen. But I have used a lot of Kolhapuri chappals because they are the fake ones in the market. You can't differentiate between them because the market is filled with imitated products. The picture on the right is the picture of original basmati rice. Now, basmati rice, one basmati belongs to India and one basmati belongs to Pakistan. That is a separate debate. I'm not going into that. You must have read it in the newspaper. But I'm just talking about a basmati rice and a fake basmati rice altogether. So, people selling fake basmati rice are also liable to be sued under the GI Act. Plant varieties and farmers' rights. Now, as explained yesterday, India is a farmer-based country. It is important to protect their varieties and their rights. So this act came into force. The act protects plant varieties, rights of farmers and plant breeders. By such protection, it encourages developing new varieties. So the objectives of the act are to stimulate investment for research and development of new varieties, growth of the seed industry and therefore making good quality seeds available in the country, protecting the rights of farmers who spend a lot of time, effort, and resources in conserving and making plant resources. I think these 3 points are quite clear. I don't need to explain them. They're self-explanatory. If anybody has not understood, please tell me. For integrated circuits also, as I explained, that the smaller the circuit, the less space it takes and the more user friendly it will be and the more it will be sold, obviously. So they are also protected under IPRs. Integrated circuits are used in a wide range of products like mobile phones, TV, watches, radio, washing machines, etc., which are used on a day-to-day basis. There is a growing need to create these layout designs. The smaller the integrated circuit, the less space it requires. And considering the effort that goes into its making, it is important to protect them under the IPR regime. They are creations of the human mind, and a lot of financial investment also goes into their making. It is created by highly qualified technical experts. If they are not protected, any person can copy the design and create a circuit by putting a fraction of the money actually being spent by a legitimate creator, making it unfair on the part of the original creator. Thus, the Semiconductor Integrated Circuits Layout Design Act 2000 was enacted by the Indian legislature. I hope this is clear. Confidential information I also explained yesterday, trade secrets, Coca-Cola, Pepsi wala example. In a
Yes,
competitive
ma'am.
economy, there is certain information which is kept confidential by companies. For example, the recipe of Coca-Cola, keeping this information confidential is very crucial for the business to survive. Protecting this information under the IPR regime comes into play here. This confidential relationship basically implies that if one person is given certain information on trust, then such person cannot use that information for anything else except for the purpose for which it was given in the first place. For example, in an employer-employee relationship, lawyer-client, doctor-patient relationship. When such confidential information is of a business or an enterprise, it is called a trade secret. At the moment, there is no Indian statute to protect confidential information. It is protected by judicial pronouncements. Now, is everybody clear with the introduction to IP? These are the broad kinds of IPRs. Now, every unit will deal with separate IPs. We'll go into the technicalities and sections of each act separately. But are you guys clear with the brief introduction? Is there any confusion? Do you think anything is overlapping, or are you perfectly clear?
Ma'am,
Yeah, tell
ma'am,
me.
you're starting the meeting through a chat, ma'am?
No.
Ma'am, then could you schedule the meeting so we can have the recordings? If you
No, I've
do it,
recorded the meeting. I'll put the like recording on streams also.
it's just that, ma'am, yesterday's recording, I think you started the meeting on chat, and I think today also, ma'am, the meeting is on the chat. We can't see the meeting on the under the name of our class, and we can't see the recordings, ma'am.
You
We
can't
don't
see
have
the
any.
screens.
Yeah, ma'am, we don't have any access to the chat after the meeting is over.
Okay, then I'll allow
Could
the
you,
access
yeah,
also.
could you talk to Murli sir and schedule the meetings
I
according to
did
the time?
schedule the meeting. I'll ask him to give
Ma'am,
you the access to the chat so that you can see.
ma'am, actually the meeting was there in the calendar.
Yeah, it is there because I schedule it. Otherwise, like I can't call you because I schedule my
Yeah,
meeting according to the timetable.
yes,
And
ma'am, I understood that. It's just that we can't access the meeting through the Teams. We have to go to the calendar. In
Harshita,
fact,
it's there on the calendar.
yeah, I understand, but I can't
These
access the
classes.
meetings or the recordings.
the recording is
You
being
can
uploaded
access
on
through the
Microsoft
calendar
Stream.
only after the meeting also.
We don't have any access to the chat anymore.
Ma'am, I have a doubt regarding the maximum.
We did. I downloaded it.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Maybe it's a problem
Can
with me.
somebody help Harshita so that she knows where the
Yeah,
recording?
ma'am, I'll try to contact with my friends and I'll understand.
Yeah, okay. Okay, so Amri Gupta has asked, can an inventor reapply for a patent after 20 years? No, you can't. After 20 years, the patent will compulsorily fall in the public domain and you can't reapply. That's where the balance of the private interest comes into play. Mohammed has asked, what's the difference between trade dress and design patent? See, trade dress is basically put on the product as part of the trademark itself. Trade dress is not a separate category of IPR. So we just devised a terminology. Trade dress, in fact, is also not used in the Bear Act anywhere. This term is being devised by the courts. So this only basically makes the definition of a trademark more inclusive in the sense it tells you that you use with the logo. It also covers the font that you're using on the logo. So it just makes it more inclusive. It's not a separate category of IPR. Design patent is a proper category. So like design is it has a more wider ambit. It protects a product at a very intense level in the sense that it protects the whole design of the product, it like all the parts of the product from the leg to the head. But the trade dress is only the color combination, the small aspects which surround the trademark. Do patents disclose all the information necessary to recreate vaccines? See, when you are applying for a patent, you have to make a full and like proper disclosure of how to work the patent to the patent office. Without that disclosure, your application is not allowed. because once and that is kept a secret for 20 years by the patent office. After 20 years is over, the information is given to the public, and then people can start, making that same vaccine or whatever. If the IPR is not waived, then the recipe or the whatever the disclosure will be given fully at the moment. If the IPR is not waived, then after 20 years. If a person prepared some poison or any illegal thing, can eat it? See, trademark, poison is not an illegal thing. Poison is also used legally for a lot of purposes. For trademark protection, the nature of the product is immaterial. So you can also get a trademark for a cigarette packet. You can also get a trademark for an alcoholic bottle. So the nature of the trademark will not decide whether the trademark should be given. This is also given in the act. So when we go into the sections, we'll read this. Does trademark include taglines, like you said, example of Nike? Yes, trademark includes taglines. If it's a longer slogan, it can also come under copyright. Can plant varieties be protected under patent? See, other countries like US protect their plant varieties under patent only, but India has a separate act. So this is called a sui generis system. So when we say the word sui generis, it means that there is a separate law for that particular IPR. If it is combined with the patent, it means it is an inclusive this thing. So US has plant varieties under patent, but India has it separately. Is an advertisement comparing two brands based upon actual facts? No, comparative advertisement is not illegal. It's only disparagement. If you're insulting the other brand, that is illegal. You can compare two brands, but you should not show their face. You should be a little more, subtle about it. Can I get the handout of IPR? Oh, I thought this was a doubt. Yeah, I'll upload this thing. I'll upload the PPT, so don't worry. Can a design be protected both under trademark and industrial design? See, design is not related to trademark as such. Design is covered only under the Industrial Design Act. However, there are certain areas where IPRs intersect, and it's a very big and complicated topic. I can't get into it right now. So there are intersections of copyright and trademark also, and there are intersections of design and copyright and design and trademark also. So that is a separate topic. We'll deal with it in detail. Are there more doubts, or can I wind up? Okay, I think that's...
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yeah.
Hello, excuse me, ma'am.
Ma'am, if I want to like sell my product globally in each country, so do I need to obtain the copyright of each different countries, or
Yes.
only one copyright
No,
is enough?
you have to file separate application for each country. So if you have only applied in India for copyright and you have the copyright in India only, and you want to sell your product outside without it being copied by someone, you have to apply in that particular country also.
Ma'am,
Okay, thank
if Apple launches a new design, like through the 3 cameras or something, but Oppo
Yeah.
and Vivo copy the same design, can't Apple sue them for infringement?
See, if Apple has patented the 3-lens technology, only then they can sue. If they have not patented it, or if it is not a new technology, if it is something that they have just discovered, or they just did 2+2 and they built something, then they cannot sue for infringement. It's only if it is patented. So you find out if the 3-lens is patented, and then you will get your answer.
Okay, ma'am, sure.
Yeah. Okay, guys, I'll wind up the class now. Thank you so much. We'll see you tomorrow.
Thank you, ma'am.